Details have now emerged on the final moments of a 25-year-old man following a fatal fall at a Kilimani apartment in an incident involving a 45-year-old woman. CCTV footage seen by KTN shows Festus Lee Owino engaged in what appears to be a scuffle between the woman, believed to be his girlfriend, shortly before the fatal fall.
Festus Oromo, the man who fell from a 14th floor apartment to his death in Kilimani estate here in Nairobi, was engaged in a scuffle with one of the suspects shortly before his fall to death. An ongoing investigations by the DCI has also established CCTV footage showing Oromo's last movements.
Just before midnight on Sunday, November 30th, 2025, a thunderous crash shattered the silence of Heartland Apartments in Kilimani, Nairobi. Residents rushed to their balconies to find a horrific scene below. A white Nissan Tinder, its roof completely crushed by the impact of a body. Lying there was a 25-year-old Festus Lee Owino. He had just plummeted from a short-term rental apartment on the 14th floor. Within hours, the tragedy exploded across Kenya's social media, completely viral. The internet quickly unraveled a complex web, gossiping about a tense 2-year Tinder age gap romance between Festus and a woman 20 years his senior, a dynamic the online streets immediately labeled a Ben 10 relationship. But this wasn't just internet drama, it was a homicide investigation. What truly gripped the nation was a chilling, unexplained timeline and a mysterious third party. CCTV cameras captured Festus outside the apartment door, locked in a fierce physical scuffle with his girlfriend before they finally went inside. His cousin Patrick Jagongo was also confirmed to be on the premises exactly 41 minutes later. Festus was dead. What happened in these missing 41 minutes? Was it a tragic accident or was he pushed? We are breaking down the DCI forensic files next. If you want to uncover the dark truth behind Kenya's biggest headlines, hit the subscribe button now and turn on notification for Dark Echoes 254. Let's dive into the evidence. Dark Echoes 254. To understand how a quiet Sunday night ended in a fatal fall, we have to look at the two very different lives that collided on Tinder back in late 2024. At the center of this story is 25-year-old Festus Lee Owino Oromo. Originally from Seme area in Kisumu, Festus was a young man trying to build a life for himself in the Kenyan's capital. Like many, in his teen 20s, he was navigating the fast-paced Nairobi social scene, using dating apps to meet new people and expand his horizons. On the other side of the screen was a 48-year-old Lilian Moraa Mbeki. Lilian was established, highly educated professional who carried herself with an air of sophisticated independence, a dual citizenship of both Kenya and Costa Rica. She had spent years building an impressive resume that featured high-level roles within the United Nations and various tech spaces. On top of her demanding corporate life, she was a mother of 3. To anyone looking from the outside, Lilian was a woman who had completely conquered her professional and personal worlds. When Festus and Lilian matched on Tinder, their connection bypassed the traditional social boundaries of age and background. Over the next 2 years, their relationship developed through occasional meetups, a private arrangement kept away from the prying eyes of their everyday social cycles. It was an unconventional dynamic that seemed to work for both in short bursts, which bring us to the final weekend of November 2025. Hoping to spend a weekend together, they booked a short-term Airbnb rental at the Heartland Apartment in Kindaruma Road, checking in on Friday, November 28th. It was supposed to be a private getaway in an upscale Nairobi estate, but as the weekend drew to a close, the occasional meetup that had defined a 2-year romance were about to culminate in an intense confrontation inside that 14th floor room. To truly understand what catalyzed the horrific fall on Sunday night, investigators had to painstakingly reconstruct every single hour of that weekend. It all began on Friday, November 28, 2025, when Festus Lee Owino and Lilian Moraa Mbeki checked into house 140 located in Block B of the Heartland Apartments. Initially, the vibe was completely relaxed, the typical start to a private weekend getaway in Kilimani. But as the hours rolled on, the isolated nature of the meetup began to shift. By Sunday, the dynamic in the room changed with the arrival of Festus' cousin, that is Patrick Jagongo. What started as a private couple retreat transformed into a heavy social gathering. Logbooks and subsequent DCI tracking revealed that the trio spent hours inside the apartment consuming alcohol and ordering food. Investigators noted that multiple food delivery riders and courier services made rounds to the 14th floor over the weekend, hinting at a continuous partying atmosphere inside the rental. Logbooks also indicated that a few other unidentified guests briefly passed through the apartment during that period, creating a busy, constantly shifting environment. As the clock ticked past midnight into the early hours of Monday morning, the camera outside the door of house 1406B began capturing a very specific, critical sequence of events. At approximately 1:06 a.m., Festus' cousin Patrick Jagongo stepped out of the apartment alone. He didn't immediately leave. Instead, he lingered outside the door for about 1 full minute, as if hesitating or listening to what was happening inside before turning around and re-entering the room. 7 minutes later, at around 1:13 a.m., Patrick reappeared into the hallway, but this time he wasn't alone. Festus came out with him. To anyone watching the security tapes, the relationship between the cousins at that moment seemed completely normal. Festus was seen holding Patrick warmly by the shoulders while Patrick held a drink in his hands. The two men interacted briefly, laughing and appearing entirely cordial before Patrick finally walked away to leave the building, eventually heading back to his residence in Kahawa West. This left Festus and Lilian completely alone inside the apartment. At approximately 1:15 a.m., Festus was seen returning down the corridors alone. He entered the apartment and almost instantly, a visible high volatile scuffle erupted between him and Lilian. The hallway camera captured an intense back and forth struggle, with Festus pulling away and resisting while Lilian actively engaged with him. The raw tension in their body language was undeniable. After a moment of back and forth, the struggle shifted as they crossed the threshold back into the house, slamming the door shut behind them. At exactly 1:16 a.m., the door closed. This would be the absolute last time Festus Oromo was seen alive. What happened inside the next 41 minutes is the dark heart of the entire mystery. The corridor camera showed no one else entering or leaving that specific door. Inside the apartment, out of sight of the security lenses, a violent confrontation erupted. When detectives later processed the scene, they found a room in total disarray. Furniture shifted, items overturned, and Festus' clothes and personal identification documents completely scattered across the space. The physical evidence screamed that a struggle had taken place inside the walls of the rentals. Then came the final tragic frame of the digital timeline. At exactly 1:57 a.m., precisely 41 minutes after the door slammed shut, the external CCTV camera captured a shadow plunging through the darkness from the 14th floor balcony. Festus Oromo fell completely naked, striking a packed white Nissan Tinder with a devastating impact. When Kilimani police forced their way into the apartment shortly after, they found a baffling scene. Festus was dead on a pavement below, but Lilian Moraa was found inside one of the bedrooms, seemingly fast asleep and heavily intoxicated. The transition from a cordial goodbye with his cousin to a fatal, chaotic drop remains one of the most chilling timelines the Nairobi Homicide Unit has had to dissect. The entire weight of this murder investigation rests entirely between 1:16 a.m. and 1:57 a.m. Those 41 minutes are a terrifying black box, a brief stretch of time where a young man went from walking down a hallway to plunging to his death. What happened when the door closed is where the absolute certainty of the CCTV footage ends and where the grueling forensic work of the DCI begins. Investigators are forced to look at the physical wreckage left behind inside the house to reconstruct a timeline that only 2 people truly witnessed. When the police questioned Lilian Moraa Mbeki about those missing 41 minutes, her account offered very little clarity. According to court details, Lilian maintained that she had been heavily drinking throughout the weekend. She claimed that after the intense alcohol-fueled arguments with Festus, she simply went to bed and fell fast asleep, completely unaware of the horror unfolding on the balcony. But for investigators, her statement raised massive questions. How could someone sleep through the sheer physical noise of what the forensic proved happened inside that room? The scene evidence processed by the DCI Homicide Unit painted a picture of absolute violent chaos that directly contradicted the idea of a quiet night. Bottles of alcohol were scattered across the counters, and detectives also recovered substances suspected to be illegal drugs, hinting that the environment inside the room was heavily altered by chemical influence. Most disturbing of all was the state of Festus' personal belonging. He fell from the 14th floor completely naked, yet all his clothes, his phone, and his identification documents were found strewn across the floor of the room, as if he had been stripped or blocked from accessing his things during a final desperate confrontation. This physical evidence leaves investigators grappling with three distinct, terrifying scenarios. The first is that the altercation caught on the hallway camera escalated to a fatal extreme under the heavy influence of alcohol and suspected drugs, resulting in Festus being physically overpowered and pushed over the balcony. The second scenario is a desperate escape attempt gone wrong, that Festus, stripped off his clothes and cornered in a state of high panic or drug-induced paranoia, tried to climb down or hang from the balcony to escape an immediate threat inside the room, only to lose his grip. The third possibility is a severe psychotic break or an accidental slip during a high erratic intoxicated argument where the safety boundaries of the 14th floor were completely ignored. As the DCI await the final toxicology reports and forensic DNA sweeps from the balcony railing, the truth remains locked in that 41-minute window. Did a toxic romance reach a murderous climax, or did a chaotic night under the influence trigger a tragic fatal accident? As the DCI pieces together this intricate criminal puzzle, the focus narrows down to the specific actions and movements of the individuals inside House 1406. Each person's role during their fateful weekend forms a critical pillar of the prosecution's case. At the very center of the legal storm is 48-year-old Lilian Moraa Mbeki, identified by detectives as the primary individual involved in that final aggressive scuffle at 1:15 a.m. Her actions immediately before the door closed are under intense scrutiny. As the last person known to be alive with Festus during those critical 41 minutes, the state of the room, her dual citizenship, and her claims to be fast asleep place her squarely at the heart of the suspected murder charge. Then there's Festus' cousin, Patrick Jagongo, whose shifting timeline has become one of the most thoroughly analyzed aspects of the investigation. Patrick's movements in the hallway, lingering outside the door at 1:06 a.m., appearing cordial and laughing with Festus at 1:13 a.m., while CCTV conclusively prove his physical departure from the building occurred just minutes before the final scuffle and the 41 minutes gap began, his role over the weekend remains highly scrutinized. Detectives are still establishing whether he was simply a witness to a deteriorating domestic situation, a mediator who walked away too soon, or if his actions prior to leaving inadvertently set the stage for the tragedy that followed. A postmortem examination conducted revealed that Festus suffered extensive trauma, including multiple organ injuries to the head, chest, and abdomen, and fractures to both legs. The impact severely damaged the vehicle on which he landed. Kilimani police swiftly executed the arrest of both Lilian and Patrick. Recognizing the immense complexity of the scene and the international implication, detectives presented the suspect at the Kibera Law Courts, successfully securing a 14-day detention order to hold them in custody while the investigation progressed. This window allowed the homicide unit to conduct a comprehensive forensic analysis in the apartment, sweeping for DNA on the balcony and processing the scattered physical evidence. However, the official toxicology results, which will determine what substance were in Festus and the suspect's system that night, have still not been made public by authorities. As we look at this case today, months after that horrific November night, a frustrating and deeply unsettling silence has settled over the entire investigation. Following the initial wave of mainstream media coverage and intense public outcry, the official updates from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations have completely slowed to a crawl. The 14-day detention window granted by the Kibera law courts came and went, yet the state had not made any public declaration regarding a definitive trial verdict, formal final charges, or whether the suspects were released on bail. Behind the wall of judicial silence, a grieving family is left carrying the agonizing weight of an unresolved tragedy. For Festus' relatives back home in Seme, Kisumu, the lack of transparency is an open wound. They have actively pushed for answers, refusing to let Festus' memory be reduced to just another sensationalized, forgotten headline about a Kilimani Airbnb mystery. For them, this isn't a content for the internet to debate. It is the loss of a vibrant 25-year-old son whose life ended under deeply suspicious circumstances. They continue to call up the DCI and the Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecution to break the silence and lay bare the forensic truths of what happened. Amidst the legal gridlock, Festus Lee Owino Oromo was finally taken home to rest. He was laid to burial by his family and close friends in his ancestral home within the Seme region of Kisumu County. This leaves us with a heavy lingering question that continue to divide the public. When you look at the evidence, the physical scuffle at 1:16 a.m., the state of the room in total disarray, and 41 minutes gap, where Festus was stripped of his clothes and phone, what do you think truly happened in that 14th floor? Was this a case of domestic altercation turning murderous, or a frantic escape attempt from an immediate threat, or a tragic substance-filled misstep on an unprotected balcony? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation respectful as we watch for any breaking updates from the courts. Don't forget to like this video, share it to keep the search for answers alive, and hit the subscribe button to support Dark Echoes 254. Until the next file opens, stay safe.